If there are children nearby, take them away from the screen. This video is not about tragic accidents, not about bad luck, and not about fate. It is about choice, about decisions people made consciously, voluntarily, sometimes confidently. These are the first recipients of the Darwin Awards, chronologically, without myths, without fiction, without excuses. In the year 453, on the territory of modern-day Hungary, Attila the Hun died. He burned cities, erased entire civilizations, and ruled through fear. Europe called him the Scourge of God. That night, he was celebrating his wedding, another victory, another confirmation of his invincibility. He drank heavily, far more than his body could handle. During his sleep, he developed a nosebleed, something ordinary and harmless for a sober man. But Attila was drunk. He did not wake up. He did not realize he was choking. By morning, the greatest conqueror of his era was dead, without a sword and without enemies. A man feared by entire armies was defeated by his own body. In 1190, in Asia Minor, near the Salef River in modern-day Turkey, Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa died. He was the Holy Roman Emperor, one of the most powerful rulers in Europe, leading the Third Crusade. His army marched for days under unbearable heat, suffering from exhaustion and thirst. Soldiers collapsed on the road. When they finally reached the river, it looked like salvation. Frederick rushed forward first, eager to set an example and show strength. In his haste, he forgot to remove his armor. The metal pulled him down instantly. The current did the rest. The emperor drowned in water that barely reached his chest. Sometimes, death requires no enemy, only impatience. In 1601, in Prague, at the court of Emperor Rudolf II, Tycho Brahe died. He was one of the greatest astronomers in history, a man whose observations shaped modern science. That evening, however, was not about stars or planets. It was a formal banquet. Court etiquette forbade guests from leaving the table before the host. Doing so was considered deeply disrespectful. Tycho needed to use the restroom, but chose to endure. He kept drinking. He kept waiting. When the banquet finally ended and he stood up, the damage was already done. His bladder ruptured, leading to severe infection. He died 11 days later. A man who mapped the heavens was defeated by manners. In 1626, in London, England, Francis Bacon died. He was a philosopher, a scientist, and one of the founders of the scientific method. One cold winter day, he became fascinated by a simple question: could snow be used to preserve meat? Driven by curiosity, he went outside during freezing weather and stuffed a chicken with snow to test his theory. He ignored the cold, the wind, and his weakening body. The experiment worked, but he did not survive it. Bacon caught pneumonia and died shortly after. His final experiment proved successful, but it cost him his life. In 1687, in Paris at the Royal Court of France, Jean-Baptiste Lully died. He was the most powerful composer in the country and a favorite of King Louis XIV. During a rehearsal, he conducted with a heavy metal staff, striking the floor to keep rhythm. In a moment of enthusiasm, he accidentally drove the staff into his own foot. The wound became infected. Doctors recommended amputation, but Lully refused, fearing it would end his career. The infection spread through his body. Blood poisoning followed. The man who controlled music at court died because he refused to let go. In 1871, in a courtroom in Cobourg, Canada, Clement Vallandigham died. He was a lawyer defending a man accused of murder. Vallandigham claimed the victim had accidentally shot himself. To convince the jury, he decided to demonstrate exactly how it could have happened. Using a gun he believed to be unloaded, he reenacted the scenario. The weapon discharged. Vallandigham was shot and later died from his wounds. His demonstration worked. The defendant was acquitted. Vallandigham won the case but lost his life, proving his point. In 1978, in Los Angeles, USA, Terry Koth died. He was a legendary guitarist and a founding member of the band Chicago. Koth collected firearms and often handled them casually. At a party, he picked up a handgun and removed the magazine. Confident it was safe, he joked that the gun was not loaded and placed it against his head. He did not check the chamber. The gun fired. Sometimes experience creates false confidence, and false confidence kills. In 1984, in Los Angeles, at the Olympic Village, a man named Reginald died because of a bet. He argued with friends that he could sprint down a hallway and stop before reaching a glass window on the 39th floor. He believed his reflexes would save him. He ran at full speed. He did not stop in time. The glass shattered and he fell to his death. The desire to win the argument outweighed the instinct to survive. In 1986, in the United States, a man died while cutting down a tree on his property. The tree blocked his view, and he decided to remove only the top section. He cut through the trunk without considering how tension worked inside the wood. When the upper part detached, the remaining trunk snapped upright with violent force. The impact was instant and fatal. Nature does not forgive poor calculations. In 1987, in the United States, an experienced skydiver died after making a simple mistake. He had completed over 800 jumps and wore a helmet with a camera mounted. Preparing for another jump, he grabbed the wrong pack. He jumped from the plane as usual. The pack he opened contained his camera equipment. His parachute was still on the plane. Experience could not save him from one moment of inattention. These were only the first 10. History is long. Human intelligence is impressive. Human stupidity is consistent. The Darwin Awards did not end here. They never do. This was just the beginning.
Greetings, friends! This video isn't about cookbooks, the talent of chefs, or haute cuisine. It's about human stupidity, laziness, rage, and pure chance, which, ironically, have become our favorite dishes. History is full of mistakes, and sometimes these mistakes are damn delicious. Centuries ago, in a French cave, a young shepherd abandoned his lunch, a piece of sheep's cheese and bread, just because he spotted a beautiful girl on the horizon. He ran after her, forgetting about food for months. When he returned, the cheese was covered in a hideous blue mold. But hunger proved stronger than disgust. Thus, one young man's passion gave the world Roquefort cheese. In 1762, at a London club, John Montague, Earl of Sandwich, couldn't tear himself away from the card table for a whole day. His passion was so great that he ordered a servant to bring him meat sandwiched between two pieces of bread so as not to stain his hands and cards with grease. His addiction created the sandwich, eaten by billions today. In 1835, Lord Sandys brought a sauce recipe from India, but the apothecaries Lee and Perrins created something so foul that they horrifiedly threw the barrel into the farthest corner of their cellar. It was forgotten for 2 years. When the barrel was discovered during a cleaning, time and fermentation transformed the rotten stuff into the exquisite Worcestershire sauce. Sometimes oblivion is the best recipe. In 1853, Chef George Crumb encountered the most capricious customer of his life. The customer repeatedly returned fried potatoes, complaining about the thickness of the slices. Blinded by rage, Crumb sliced the potatoes paper thin, fried them until they were hard as rocks, and covered them in salt, hoping to break the customer's teeth. But the chef's rage gave birth to chips. 30 years later, Stephanie Tatine, tired of the influx of guests at her hotel, accidentally overcooked apples in sugar and butter. Smelling something burning, she panicked and covered the burnt fruit with batter right in the pan and threw it in the oven. This tired woman's mistake became the famous tarte tatin. In 1938, pharmacist John Pemberton was attempting to concoct a headache remedy. One day, his assistant mistakenly diluted the thick syrup with carbonated water instead of plain water. This spoiled migraine syrup became Coca-Cola, the most profitable mistake in pharmaceutical history. In 1898, the Kellogg brothers were attempting to make a diet cereal, but forgot the cooked wheat on the stove for several days. The product became stale and flaky. Trying to salvage something, they rolled the mixture through rollers and fried it. Thus, a dietary failure became cornflakes. On a frosty night in 1905, 11-year-old Frank Epperson left a glass of soda and a stirrer on the porch. The next morning, he discovered a cylinder of ice easy to hold. Childhood forgetfulness gave the world popsicles. In 1938, Ruth Wakefield was baking cookies and discovered she had run out of chocolate chip cookies. She broke a regular bar into pieces, confident they would melt in the heat and mix with the dough. But the chocolate remained in blobs. The baker's naivety gave birth to the chocolate chip cookie. And in 1943, when a restaurant in Mexico had already closed, a group of hungry ladies demanded food. Ignacio Nacho Anaya found nothing in the kitchen but leftover tortillas and cheese. He baked them with peppers, simply to avoid being cursed for having an empty kitchen. And so, fear of customers created nachos. These are just a few stories. Time flies, human genius is impressive, but human inattention is what fills our plates. These dishes weren't meant to exist, but here they are. Enjoy your meal, and remember, your next mistake could become the stuff of legend, or just ruin your dinner.
George Washington, the first president of the United States, never lived in the White House. Construction began during his presidency, but it was not finished until 1800. Washington helped choose the location and approved the design, yet he died before ever seeing it completed. The very first president ruled the country without ever stepping foot into its most famous building. Abraham Lincoln was a licensed professional wrestler. Before entering politics, he participated in over 300 wrestling matches and lost only one. He was known for his strength and reach, and opponents often refused to fight him. In 1992, Lincoln was officially inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Thomas Jefferson was obsessed with gadgets. He invented a rotating book stand that allowed him to read 5 books at once, and even redesigned furniture inside the White House. Jefferson also kept a pet mockingbird that followed him freely around the building. Andrew Jackson survived an assassination attempt when both pistols aimed at him misfired. Instead of running, the 67-year-old president attacked his would-be killer with a cane and beat him until guards intervened. The pistols were later tested and found to be fully functional. Theodore Roosevelt was shot during a speech and continued talking for 90 minutes. The bullet passed through his glasses case and speech manuscript before entering his chest, slowing it down. Roosevelt famously said, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." John Quincy Adams swam naked in the Potomac River almost every morning. Journalists knew about this habit and once waited for him by the riverbank to get an interview. Adams refused to speak until the reporter sat and listened while he finished swimming. Calvin Coolidge kept unusual pets in the White House, including a raccoon that was originally sent to be cooked for Thanksgiving dinner. Instead, the president adopted it, named it Rebecca, and walked it on a leash around the grounds. Lyndon B. Johnson terrified visitors by holding meetings while using the bathroom. He believed it saved time and showed dominance. Foreign diplomats and senators often had no choice but to continue conversations while the president sat on the toilet. Richard Nixon once called astronauts on the moon. During the Apollo 11 mission, Nixon spoke to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin via telephone, calling it the most historic phone call ever made. Joe Biden is the first U.S. president to be sworn in with a family Bible that has been in use for over 120 years. The Bible is so large that it looks almost ceremonial, and it has been used in multiple Biden family inaugurations.
Between 1931 and 1934, Bonnie Parker took part in a crime spree across Texas, Oklahoma, and several other U.S. states alongside Clyde Barrow. Together, their gang committed dozens of robberies, mainly targeting small banks, gas stations, and stores during the Great Depression. Bonnie was actively involved. She carried weapons, helped plan escapes, and often acted as a lookout. Their crimes ended in 1934, when Bonnie and Clyde were ambushed and killed by police in Louisiana. In 1974, Patty Hearst was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in California. Months later, she appeared on surveillance footage participating in an armed bank robbery in San Francisco. The group carried out at least 2 robberies during this period, and Hearst was seen holding a rifle and assisting the operation. She was arrested in 1975, convicted, and later had her sentence commuted and eventually pardoned. Doris Payne spent more than 6 decades stealing jewelry from luxury stores across the United States and Europe. She was linked to dozens of thefts worth millions of dollars. Payne relied on charm and social engineering, distracting employees while stealing diamonds. She was arrested multiple times throughout her life, including in her 80s, but never stopped until old age caught up with her. During the early 1930s, Ma Barker was associated with the Barker-Karpus gang, responsible for multiple bank robberies and kidnappings across the Midwest. While historians debate how involved she truly was, authorities believed she helped coordinate logistics and hideouts. In 1935, she was killed during a shootout with the FBI in Florida. In 1974, British heiress Rose Dugdale took part in an armed robbery of Rusborough House in Ireland. The group stole valuable paintings worth millions to fund the Irish Republican Army. Dugdale helped plan the operation and participated directly. She was arrested shortly after and sentenced to prison. During the 2000s, female members of the Pink Panthers network participated in dozens of high-profile jewelry robberies across Europe and Asia. The group carried out over 300 robberies in total, often stealing millions in minutes.
Women played key roles by blending in as wealthy clients and distracting staff. Many members were eventually arrested by international police agencies. In the early 2000s, an elderly woman nicknamed the Grandma Bank Robber committed a series of bank robberies across several U.S. states. Disguised as a harmless senior, she passed notes to tellers demanding cash. She was eventually identified and arrested after multiple robberies. In the 1990s, Valérie Subra participated in multiple armed robberies in France as part of a criminal group. She acted as both a planner and active participant. Her crimes ended with arrest and long-term imprisonment. During the early 1980s, Leanne Banks took part in a string of store and small business robberies, often acting as a distraction while accomplices stole cash. She was arrested after repeated offenses and later cooperated with investigators. In the 2010s, Ashley Miller was involved in several impulsive robberies driven by financial desperation. Unlike organized criminals, her crimes were poorly planned and quickly traced. She was arrested after only a short period, highlighting how most robberies end not in freedom, but prison. Iran Air Flight 655, 1988, 290 fatalities. On July 3, 1988, Iran Air Flight 655 was mistakenly shot down by a U.S. Navy cruiser over the Persian Gulf. All 290 passengers and crew were killed. The incident remains one of the most controversial aviation tragedies in modern history. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17, 2014, 298 fatalities. On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine while flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. All 298 people on board were killed. The tragedy led to major international investigations and changes in flight routing over conflict zones. Pan Am Flight 103, 1988, 270 fatalities. On December 21, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, due to a bomb hidden in luggage. 259 people on board and 11 on the ground were killed. The disaster had a profound impact on aviation security worldwide. American Airlines Flight 191, 1979, 273 fatalities. In May 1979, Flight 191 lost an engine during takeoff from Chicago O'Hare Airport. The damage caused loss of control, and the DC-10 crashed moments later. It remains the deadliest aviation accident in U.S. history. Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 163, 1980, 301 fatalities. In 1980, a fire broke out shortly after takeoff aboard Flight 163. The aircraft successfully returned to Riyadh, but evacuation was fatally delayed. All 301 passengers and crew died due to smoke inhalation. The tragedy changed emergency evacuation procedures worldwide. Air India Flight 182, 1985, 329 fatalities. On June 23, 1985, Air India Flight 182 exploded mid-air over the Atlantic Ocean due to a bomb placed in the cargo hold. All 329 people aboard were killed. It remains one of the deadliest acts of aviation terrorism in history. Turkish Airlines Flight 981, 1974, France, 346 fatalities. On March 3, 1974, Turkish Airlines Flight 981 crashed shortly after takeoff from Paris due to a cargo door design flaw that caused explosive decompression. The DC-10 lost control and crashed into a forest. All 346 people on board were killed. The accident forced significant redesigns in aircraft cargo systems. Charkhi Dadri mid-air collision, 1996, India, 349 fatalities. On November 12, 1996, a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747 collided mid-air with a Kazakhstan Airlines Ilyushin IL-76 near Charkhi Dadri, India. The crash occurred due to altitude deviation and language misunderstandings between pilots and air traffic control. All 349 people aboard both aircraft were killed. The disaster accelerated the global adoption of collision avoidance systems. Japan Airlines Flight 123, 1985, Japan, 520 fatalities. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 suffered catastrophic structural failure after an improperly repaired rear pressure bulkhead ruptured. The Boeing 747 lost hydraulic systems and became nearly uncontrollable. The aircraft crashed into Mount Takamagahara 32 minutes later. Of the 524 people on board, 520 were killed. It remains the deadliest single aircraft accident in history. Tenerife Airport disaster, 1977, Spain, 583 fatalities. On March 27, 1977, two Boeing 747 aircraft, operated by KLM and Pan Am, collided on the runway at Los Rodeos Airport in Tenerife. Due to heavy fog, miscommunication between pilots and air traffic control, and confusion about takeoff clearance, one aircraft began its takeoff roll while the other was still on the runway. The collision killed 583 people, making it the deadliest accident in aviation history.